Bienvenidas, bienvenidos. Welcome. Today we are going to talk about the Garifuna people, a very special group. This group of people find their home in the Caribbean and along the Caribbean coast of Central America. And this was a special request, so Norita, this one's for you. But first, Latina Literati. Garifuna people are a combination, an amalgamation, a mixture of the Caribbean indigenous group, the Arawaks, and enslaved peoples that were able to escape many times because of shipwrecks. And they lived together and they intermarried, had families. And so in the Caribbean islands, especially St. Vincent, you had this group that was fiercely independent, fierce warriors, were fighting the French and the British to try and stay free. And eventually the British had a policy of genocide. They wanted to kill all of those who were not enslaved, both indigenous and those who had been enslaved before. So they were able, incredibly, to flee to Honduras. And here's a map of that distance. So imagine transversing all of that in canoes or small boats and surviving what could have been an absolute massacre. Many people died along the way to Honduras, but some survived and flourished. From the island of Roatan in Honduras, the Garifuna spread. And so today there are about 600,000 people that identify as Garifuna, about half of them living in Honduras, about 200,000 in New York City. With all of the Caribbean migration to New York, there is a large Garifuna population. And the rest are spread out through Belize, Guatemala, obviously Honduras, and Nicaragua. And of course, on the island of St. Vincent, there are still members of the Garifuna group. So it's really interesting how this group was able to flourish and then find its way to all of these countries with their very distinct language. Their language is a combination of traditional African language, Arawak words, and Creole, which is a combination of all of those with French. So fascinating. There's the music, there's the language, and of course there's the cuisine. So an example of the fabulous cuisine is the cassava root type of yuca. The preparation is really important because if you were just to eat the cassava without the preparation, it would kill you because it's poisonous. But the indigenous people and the African people knew of the roots that had to be prepared, and so you peel it and you grate it, and then you strain out all of the poisonous liquid, and then you prepare it. It's so delicious. And one of the ways that the Garifuna traditionally prepared is with what they call bundinga, which is green plantains. So good, so good. With fish, of course, the abundant fish in the Caribbean. And the word for the cassava dish is ereba. When the cassava or ereba is prepared with fish, it's called hudut. And it's also prepared with a wonderful sticky coconut rice. Imagine all those flavors coming together. Really good. And of course, all of this is made possible by the bounty of the Caribbean and Central America, some very fertile lands where the Garifuna settled. The Garifuna music is very lively, it's very danceable, and like most of the Caribbean is based on types of drums that are used as the basis of their music. And so when it's time for festivals and carnival and different celebrations, the music is central to the Garifuna culture. This is just a very small sampling of what the Garifuna have to offer. There's so much richness in the Caribbean, in the different cultural groups that are there, and I hope that this has served you to just whet your appetite to learn more about the different groups of the Caribbean. And now for my favorite part of the video, the book recommendations. The first book recommendation that I have is called Garifuna DNA. And so this book talks about the special mixture that is the Garifuna people. You have the indigenous of the Caribbean, you have the African that come together to form this very special cultural group. And so it traces that special group from the Caribbean, from its origins, and how they survive the genocidal British colonial policies and get to Honduras and eventually to other countries as well. So if you're interested in this subject, this is a good book to start to get an overview of who the group is and, of course, what they have evolved into, a large group in many countries today. The second book I'm going to recommend today is called The Sojourners to the Capital of the World. And this book is about the Garifuna and how they make their way to New York starting in the 1940s. As many people from the Caribbean migrate to New York, so do the Garifuna. And it talks about how they make their place in the world in New York, and it takes you all the way up to the present, the different celebrations and the ways that the Garifuna celebrate their cultural identity in New York City. So I thought that might also be of interest to you. As always, check your libraries, your local bookseller. We love our libraries, we love our local booksellers, and if those are not available to you, we always include in the description box links so that you may purchase the books recommended through independent online booksellers, because we want to support local, we want to support small. So thank you so much for coming to the end of the video on this journey together. We would love you to subscribe to Latina Literati. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about in these videos, and tell us what you're reading. What are the books that you're interested in? I always want to get book recommendations as well, and so let's share them. Thank you so much, as always, y con mucho cariño, mucho salud, mucho amor. Gracias.